Today's lesson is about genes and the environment. Today is November 4th, 2020, and this is our 7th day of Unit 7. By the end of today, you all will be able to explain the environment and its impact on gene expression. The essential question that we seek to answer by the end of the lesson: what is the cause and effect relationship between genes and the environment? Now, you may have just heard that beeping noise, which indicates that I have started to record the lesson. You can find all of our recorded lessons here at the YouTube playlist that I just shared with you all. You can find all of our recorded lessons right there. Definitely a good idea for you to check that out, especially as we start to get closer to the EOC exam. In addition to that playlist, go ahead, question? Okay. In addition to that playlist, I want to mention that there's another playlist where I will be uploading specific review videos. There is one video that's available to you there. I sent the video out in a remind message to you all as well, but that is a video that's about Punnett squares, ratios, probability, and the basics of genetics. So I definitely encourage you all to give that a listen as well. But as we start to think about the EOC and start preparing for the EOC, I definitely want you all to know what's going on and what to expect from this EOC exam this year. It will look a little bit different, and it's going to be a slight change to the norm that we've come to establish. And what I mean by that is our EOC will be conducted in person, and we will be at West Meck taking the EOC exam. Our EOC exam will be on Thursday, December 17th. And obviously you all know that EOC exams must be passed in order to receive credit for the course. So not only is this your final exam, but it is also required to have passed the course. Again, this will take place on December 17th. Now, because we will be in school, in person, taking these exams, we need to understand if you all need transportation to get to school on that day and during that week. So you have a question, Anthony?
Yes. What day is it again?
December 17th, Thursday, December 17th.
December 17th.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Thursday, December 17th. Yes.
Okay.
So I need you all to take the next 3 minutes or so. Let's go until 12:19. I just sent a link to the chat. It is a Google form link. I need you to go ahead and click on that link and complete this survey just to indicate what your plans are in terms of getting to campus to take your EOC exam. The EOC exam is obviously not optional. Everybody needs to do it.
Okay, hold up.
They have bugs and stuff.
So let's take the next 2 to 3 minutes to complete that survey that has now been sent to the chat. You should also have received several emails about this, and there is also an assignment available on Canvas where you can access that link as well. But this is a quick survey. It shouldn't take much time at all.
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
My mom asked if you can talk to her after class.
We may need. I mean, I have a meeting today.
Okay.
reason why.
So just ask her to send me an email, and we can find a time. Or text me, whatever works best.
Selma says, she said thank you anyway, but that's, she appreciated it, but she'll contact the school.
Okay. She said thank you anyway, but she's gonna contact the school. But have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, 1 more minute to finish up that survey, and then we'll jump back into the lesson. All right. So as it relates to genes in the environment, we don't have much need to take notes today. We just need to go over a general concept that you all will see appear on your EOC exam. You also know that this is something we've talked about throughout Unit 7, and it's something that I want you all to continue to think about as we go through the rest of the course. But there is a cause and effect relationship between a person's genes and their environment. Many of the traits that make us who we are as individuals depend on both genetic and environmental factors. For example, skin color. We have genes that code for our skin color, but also the amount of sun that you are exposed to determines your skin color as well. Intelligence. We have genes that code for specific brain pathways that might make a person have a better long-term or short-term memory or be able to process information faster. But at the same time, intelligence is also a result of your access to schooling and to an education. Weight. Some people are genetically predisposed to being different sizes. Some people have the ability to break down their foods faster. Some people don't have that ability. And so your weight is ultimately going to be impacted by your genes, but also your choices in terms of what you eat and the amount of physical activity you can engage in will also have an impact on your weight. So we've got these two sides of a coin here. We think about this coin as deciding at any given time what your trait will be, what a person's qualities will be. Then one side is going to be the genes, the other side is going to be the environment. And at any given time, we could find ourselves landing on one side of the coin or the other. So heredity, which of course is another word for inheritance, it's the study of inheritance, and environment interact to produce their effects. The ways genes are expressed depend on the environment in which they are exposed. Let's do a quick flashback.
Isn't eye color like hereditary too? And like hair color?
Yeah, eye color and hair color, but of course our environment can affect those as well. Some people who have specific hair colors, their hair gets lighter in the summer I'm sorry, it gets darker in the summer as it's exposed to sun, and then it gets lighter again in the winter when there's not as much sun exposure. So even then, we can see some environmental effect as well.
That's cool.
Yeah. So flashback practice question: why is the process of meiosis important to sexual reproduction? A, it provides genetic variation in offspring. B, it doubles the number of chromosomes in offspring. C, it reduces the number of alleles from parent to offspring. Or D, it produces a hybrid of all genetic traits in offspring. Go ahead and send your answer to the chat. Is it A, B, C, or D? Why is the process of meiosis important to sexual reproduction? Good, Shipes. Good, Nick. Good, Jessica. Excellent job. Good, Delia. So yes, this process is important to sexual reproduction because it allows for genetic variation. If you think back to meiosis, meiosis is what produces sperm and egg cells. Every sperm and every egg cell is genetically unique. None of them are similar. They all differ in slight ways, sometimes in major ways. And so when a sperm meets an egg and it fertilizes the egg, we simply don't have a way to know exactly what the outcome will be. There's a great amount of genetic variation. Even if two people have 20 children, it's unlikely that any of their children will be exactly alike. They will all have unique personalities. They will have unique physical qualities. Even identical twins have some genetic differences. And this is because of the process of genetic variation. Starting with meiosis, I'm not going to do that. So we're looking at this image, and we can see all the ways that the environment influences our traits. So can someone just kind of take themselves off of mute and talk about one of these images that you're seeing, or talk about something else that you know is an environmental impact?
Environmental, I see workplace and the cause of cancer. The workplace you're surrounded by can cause cancer to go through your body depending on what you're working in. See, if you're working in a factory or something like that, and you're doing stuff with your hands, it can go inside your body and you can gain cancer from it.
That's very true. Excellent job, Anthony. So the chemicals that we're exposed to sometimes in our workplace, like Anthony was talking about, certainly can impact our genes. They can begin to cause mutations in our cells that can lead to types of cancer. So he's 100% right. Anything else that we can think of?
The radioactivity up top, in the top right.
Good. So up here in this image, Brian is talking about radioactivity. What do you know about that, Brian? Can you say more?
Well, I know it can cause mutations in your body, and it could lead to cancer most likely too, and other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And where might you get some of that radiation? What's the source of radiation?
Nuclear power plant. Oh.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. So actually, radiation is always happening all around us, but the amount of radiation that we're typically exposed to is so small and so weak that it doesn't really have an impact. But for people who live near or who work in nuclear power plants, that amount of radiation can be much larger. And when things go wrong, as has happened a couple times in history, in Chernobyl, and then it happened about 8 years ago in Japan, the amount of radiation can be devastating. It can be totally deadly. It can be so high that people are no longer able to inhabit or live near those power plants. So yes, Brian is 100% right. The radiation can also cause mutations in our cells, which can lead to cancers. Anything else we can think about?
We got drugs and alcohol. That could be a hereditary and surrounded from around you. So you can gain it from your genes because your parents could have been done it and you would automatically lead to you. And like some people, like their parents would do it, and then they would do it too, even if they don't know their parent. And then it could be led from around you because of all the people you see do it. So you might as well think it's cool or think it's going to help you in certain ways.
Okay, good. So now I want to clear one thing up that you said. So it's possible, let's say that a person who is, let's say a baby is inside of its mother, it's developing in their mother's womb, and that mother is continuing to drink alcohol or she's continuing to smoke cigarettes. Mm-hmm. Then we can see that those chemicals from the alcohol, from the cigarettes, those chemicals will certainly, be also ingested by the baby because the baby's blood is coming from the mother. And we also do know that some people are more likely to develop addiction. Maybe you've heard people say that they have an addictive personality. That is neurologically, it is possible for people to develop an increased likelihood of developing an addiction. But it's not that, when if your parents, 4 years before, 5 years before they had you, drank a lot, it's not likely that you will then, it's not necessarily more likely that you will then also have a drinking problem when you grow older. So we want to be careful with that. We wouldn't typically consider drugs and alcohol to be a hereditary or a genetic issue. We would think of that as an environmental issue. But thank you for bringing that up, Anthony.
Of course.
Anything else we want to point out?
Right down there it shows that's the thing you cook with, right? That little, and this little box down here, the little white box at the bottom. That over there goes to that little orange circle.
The orange circle?
Yeah, that's something you cook with.
I actually cannot tell what that is.
I know this will be a needle for drugs or something. That leads to
maybe. Yeah, I see a needle here. Yeah, so I'm not sure what all of these.
Yeah, they all got something going on in them. Then I see.
We also know that, to a certain degree, we are all exposed to radiation from the sun, right? So sun exposure can also lead to specific types of cancer, skin cancer.
All that is radiation.
Right. So now the sun is not going to be extremely harmful to most of us, but if you're spending a lot of time in the sun, it's definitely a good idea to wear sunscreen because it protects your skin from the UV radiation from the sun. Additionally, X-rays can be very damaging as well. Now, if you've only gotten 2 or 3 X-rays over the course of your lifetime, that's not a big deal. If you've only gotten X-rays on your hand or in your leg, it's not a big deal because they have you wear this lead vest that protects you from the radiation, protects your internal organs from radiation. But if you're getting a lot of X-rays, or if you are working as an X-ray technician, and so you have to give a lot of X-rays, it can over time accumulate and become more dangerous to you, and you can develop some cancers from that. But there are other types of imaging techniques like MRIs, which are much more damaging to people. Okay. So let's look at another example of how the environment plays a role. A case study of China. So the rate of lung cancer has increased dramatically over the years in China. This is an epidemic caused by their environment. The smog from the busy cities in and around China has caused mutations that are leading to cancer. So China, even in the last 20 or 30 years or so, has undergone a huge amount of development. They're building these huge cities and they're building them extremely quickly. So a fun fact, in the 4 years between 2009 and 2013, China used more concrete than the United States did in the entire 20th century. So the United States, the amount of concrete we used here in 100 years was outpaced by China in just 4 years because they are building up these cities so quickly. As a result, their air quality is not good. They are putting all of these chemicals into their air. as they are mass producing all of these goods. They're mass producing infrastructure. And so it's not good for their air. And you see in these images, you can see how dark the air is. It looks almost brown. That's the smog. That's what smog is. As a result, smog carries chemicals, and those chemicals are then breathed in by the people who live in China or who are visiting China. And so this is very damaging to their lungs. And we can see in this graph that the amount of cancer is increasing in China. It's increasing exponentially. So they're expecting that, even though this is just an estimate, in 2050, 3.77 million people will die from lung cancer specifically in China. All right, so this is a huge problem. And this is something that is caused by human activity. We're going to talk more about that next in our 9th unit. But this is caused because of the development of the country. They're building up all these massive cities. They're driving many more cars. They need a lot more trains to transport materials. A lot more people are flying. All of these things are putting pollutants into the air, and it's really bad for our health. So which of the following, again, another practice question, which of the following would be the most likely outcome of a genetic mutation? And you can send your answer in the chat. A decrease in ATP production. B, an error in the formation of an enzyme. C, a new DNA strand replicating in its place. Or D, the body would identify and heal the mutation. Which of those would most likely be the outcome of a genetic mutation? I've got an answer from Nick. I'd like to see some more answers.
C.
I heard an answer C. I'm not sure who that came from.
Anthony.
Oh, thank you, Anthony.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Do we have any other thoughts about this?
C.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, yes, that is correct. So C, a new DNA strand replicating in its place. So when we think about this phrase, genetic mutation, we should be thinking about some type of change taking place in DNA. So when we think about answering our test questions, we do have a test coming up on Friday. So when we think about answering test questions, we need to be able to come up with these mental brain dumps. You need to make associations between phrases and say, genetic mutation, that should automatically trigger thoughts in my mind about DNA. I should be thinking about some type of change taking place in DNA. And then, of course, the answer choice becomes pretty obvious if you can think about it that way. Okay, so I'm not going to watch this video right now because I'm having audio issues, but I'm going to send this to you all. We do these identical twin studies because identical twins have, for all intents and purposes, the exact same DNA. They have very few differences in their DNA. And so we can study them knowing that they are basically two people with the exact same DNA and see what the impact of different environments has on those twins. So in some cases, as is the case in this video, which I would encourage you all to watch on your own time, we can find identical twins who have been separated at birth. They've lived their entire lives in different states, in different countries, with different parents. And so they've been exposed to totally different experiences. But still, they have very similar DNA. So we can look and see what is the impact of their environment and on the choices that they've made in terms of making them who they are. We can study them for that purpose. So it's really cool stuff. I would definitely encourage you all to check it out. My mouse. What we're getting at is that your genome makes you who you are, but your genome can be altered by the environment and by which your body is exposed to. Because of this, many of the top causes of death here in the United States are preventable. For example, many types of cancer, heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the United States, and often heart disease is preventable as well. Type 2 diabetes, accidents, most of these are what we would consider preventable. Now, we have to be careful with how we say the word preventable, because oftentimes what we mean is that people had choices to eat better diets or to be more active or to live in a safer way. But sometimes that's not always the case, right? We know that food deserts exist where people live in places where the closest grocery store that sells fresh produce is more than 10 miles away. So in that case, you might have to think, well, is it really a choice for them to eat poorly? Or is it something that, is that a situation that they're forced into because they don't have access to healthier foods? It's too far away. In some cases, people aren't culturally taught to eat healthier foods, to practice better health habits. They might not have access to regular health care, to be able to see a doctor and the doctor explain these things to them and tell them, oh, you're pre-diabetic. You need to change your diet in this way. You need more activity. Maybe some people don't live in an area or a community where it's safe to go for a walk outside, or where it's safe to be active in the backyard. Maybe they don't have a backyard, right? So many of these diseases are what we would consider preventable, but it's not always as black and white as a person choosing to do one thing or not choosing to do it and potentially getting sick. Okay, so I want you all to be aware of that and be sensitive to the fact that all of these other factors are at play that contribute to whether a person is quote unquote healthy. It's not just about choosing to do the right thing. If it were that easy, then I would have to believe that the vast majority of us would, of course, choose to be healthy. All right. So we're going to present you with a few case studies, and I want you to think about these case studies and tell me if you think that people with these diseases have been caused by genetics, by the environment, or by some combination of both. All right, so let's think about this. So our first case study is about a man named Steve. Steve was born to 2 healthy parents. He was a track star throughout middle school and high school. During college, he started eating a lot of fast food. McDonald's quickly became his favorite restaurant. He began working as an engineer and decreased his physical activity. Just this year, he was diagnosed with heart failure. What is the cause of his heart problems? Is it genetic or is it environmental, or both?
Environmental.
Why do you say that, Anthony?
That was me.
I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I say that it was that because he was eating the McDonald's and not doing any sports, so it led to that.
Okay, good. So his diet wasn't great, and he wasn't physically active. And based on what I was just talking about, we would probably be comfortable saying that for Steve, this was a choice. Steve was. What'd you say, Anthony?
He's a scientist. That's how he got skinny. He was fat. So what to tell you? That man's
So what we're saying is that Steve was working as an engineer. So he probably, he had a science background. He was well educated. He probably knew that he needed to eat better and be more physically active to be healthy. At the same time, he was working as an engineer. So he probably had enough money to afford healthier food. So in this case, we probably would be comfortable saying that this was a choice for Steve, and this was caused, his heart disease, his heart failure was caused by the environment. So good job identifying that, Brian. Let's think about another case study. Erin. Erin was born to 2 healthy parents as well. Everything was normal throughout her development and birth. A few hours after her birth, the doctors came in to deliver some bad news to her parents. Erin had tested positive for cystic fibrosis. It turns out that her parents were both carriers, even though they never knew it. Erin has been living with cystic fibrosis for 26 years now, hoping scientists will find a cure. So what do you all think? Is this genetic, or is this environmental, or is it both?
Genetic.
Can you say more about that, Brian?
Well, I would say because it said her parents didn't smoke or anything, and well, she was just born, so it couldn't have been that.
There's another word here that I think would clue us off to this being genetic. There's another word in this paragraph that tells us to be thinking about genetics. What's that word?
Carriers.
Good, exactly. It says that they are carriers. So that means that her parents, in their genotype, they did have this allele for cystic fibrosis. But because they were carriers, they didn't know it. They themselves don't have cystic fibrosis, but they carried it. They carried that gene and they gave it to their daughter, Erin. So this is genetic. So do you think this could have been prevented?
No.
Why not?
Well, I would say since they were both carriers, she would most likely get it 100%. So that's why I say that.
Okay. Well, now we got to be careful because it's not a 100% chance that she would get it. Because although they do carry the trait for cystic fibrosis, they carry that one allele, they also have another allele that does not code for cystic fibrosis. So they could have just as easily given her that one. And it's actually more likely that she wouldn't have got it. So it's not a 100% chance, but it is random. Of course, we don't know exactly which sperm is going to fertilize which egg. So there's no way of really knowing, what the outcome will be when you have a child. But it's a 25% chance in this case that she would get cystic fibrosis. And unfortunately, she did. Okay, another one. Tammy is 32 and is expecting her first child. When Tammy was in college, she had unprotected sex and contracted human immunodeficiency virus. After Tammy gives birth, the doctors test her daughter Sarah for HIV. After getting the results, they learn that Sarah is HIV positive. Would you say that's genetic, or is that environmental, or both?
I mean, it could be both. Because she got it. She got the HIV from having unprotected sex. And then I would say now she's a carrier of it. And when she had the kid, that the kid got it.
Okay. Now, I do like the way you're thinking. You're also thinking about her being a carrier, but we want to be careful here. In this case, she's carrying something, but it's not in her genome. It's not a part of her DNA. She's carrying a virus, but it's not, that virus is not incorporated in her DNA. All right. So we want to be careful with that. That virus is in her blood, and so she passed the virus to her daughter through her blood. But this wouldn't be considered genetic. Okay. Good job with that, Brian. Hopefully everybody else took something away from it. And Anthony, I know you contributed a bit as well. Let's play this quick Kahoot. This is ultimately the last thing that we have to do today. It's actually not a quick Kahoot. It's going to take a little bit of time. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about the assignment that we have for you all. So you will go to www.kahoot.it. The code is 190-9972. (190-9972). Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Fanique. Let's get some more folks joining, please. I appreciate everybody who's already a part of the game. We've got 20 people in class right now, so we should have about 12 more of you in the game. This takes 60 seconds to join, 60 seconds. Okay. Based on the karyotype, what is the sex of this individual?
Man. Why is the answer called cannot tell?
Great. So this karyotype shows us all 23 chromosomal pairs, all 46 chromosomes. The 23rd pair is your X and Y pair. A person who has two X chromosomes would be female, and a person with one X and one Y is a male. So good job on that. Good job, Jessica, Joseph, Chelsea, Brian. What can be inferred about this person based on the karyotype? Now pay attention again, pay attention to the sexes. Okay, so let's take another look at this. I see a lot of you chose male with Turner syndrome, but we have to be careful. Again, two X chromosomes means that the person is female, so we can't be a male. Now, the other thing to look at, we didn't talk much about it, and you all don't need to memorize this or know this for the EOC or for your exam on Friday. But you can also look at the karyotype and see if there are any abnormalities. And what I mean by that is that every chromosome pair should have two chromosomes, right? So every position should have two chromosomes. Here, if we look at the 21st position, there are 1, 2, 3 chromosomes. So that's an abnormality. This is an abnormality called trisomy 21, and it leads to Down syndrome. All right, but really you could have figured this out if you first determined that she was a female. This person is a female. Good job, Chelsea. Which of the following can occur in meiosis and cause an abnormal number of chromosomes? This is a good one to know. If you don't know about this one, please write it down when the answer becomes available. Okay, good. So non-disjunction occurs when the chromosomes are not effectively pulled apart during meiosis 2. So remember, we're supposed to end up at the end of meiosis 2 with 4 different cells. If when those cells get pulled apart, one of them does not have a chromosome or it gets an extra chromosome, that will be a problem. That's called non-disjunction. Okay, so please write this down. Non-disjunction is often the cause of abnormal numbers of chromosomes. Okay. Chelsea's on a good streak. Which of the following describes an allele that can be masked or hidden by a dominant trait? Good. So if we're talking about a dominant trait hiding something else, then that something else must be recessive. Good job. Okay, Joseph, I see you've taken the lead. Brian and Nevaeh are also on their way up. Which of the following is the formal vocabulary term for the physical traits we see? Physical traits. Good, phenotype. So physical traits are described by a phenotype. They are a description of phenotype. Blue is dominant to green. Cross a heterozygous blue with a green. How many will be green? This one's 60 seconds. You might want to write it down, give yourself a chance to think it out. I've already got somebody who answered within 6 seconds, so we'll see. But take your time with this one. All right, 50%. Good. So some of you are probably getting so good at these Punnett squares that you can start to see them in your head. But what we should imagine now is we've got a heterozygous blue. That means one capital B and one lowercase b. We've got a green, which means two lowercase b's. When I cross those, I end up with two offspring that are heterozygous, capital B, lowercase b, and two offspring that are homozygous recessive, two lowercase b's. So my chances of having a green whatever, which would be homozygous recessive, are 50%. Good job. Come on, Nick, keep going. Good streak going on. Good job, Chelsea. All right. Which inheritance pattern results in a blended phenotype due to a heterozygous genotype?
The ASU polytype earlier.
Good, incomplete dominance. All right, so incomplete dominance is when the two phenotypes blend. Which inheritance pattern results from both proteins being expressed? So if I've got, in this case, I would have both pink and white being expressed, or both red and white being expressed at the same time. Good, that's called codominance, when both alleles are present in the heterozygous genotype. Red is completely dominant to white, cross two pink flowers. What is the genotypic ratio? What is the ratio here? Which inheritance pattern is responsible for the multiple blood types in humans? Good. Multiple alleles. Sounds like it feels like some of you have been taking good notes. You're referring back to them. The A and B allele are both dominant for blood types. Blood type AB is also considered codominant. Good. Neither of them is dominant to the other one. They are codominant to each other. So the person would express both A and B allele, both A and B traits. Why are males more likely to show sex-linked traits than females? Yes, because men only have one X chromosome. So that means they are far more likely to display traits on that chromosome. Good job, Joseph. You got a sizable lead. Let's see if Nick or Fanique or Chelsea can catch up, maybe Nevaeh. We've got 8 more questions. Mom has blood type A, dad has type B. Could they produce a child with type O? Yes, it is possible. Only one person gets it right. Okay. So I'm going to make a video, hopefully today, about pedigrees and about blood types. Check out that video if you're still confused. There's already a video on YouTube about Punnett squares in general, but I do want you all to continue to look at these review videos if you're confused about some concepts. We want to make sure that you definitely know what's going on with these blood types. Who got that question right? Good job, Nick. Okay, 7 questions left. Which type of inheritance pattern is shown in the pedigree below? Only one person. Okay, so let's check this out. I'm glad you guys said sex-linked. We know that this is sex-linked because we see that it's only affecting males. We only have shaded squares, no shaded circles.
I got it right.
It's only affected males. The other thing we need to think about is the difference between autosomal and sex-linked. Autosomal means that this would not be, well, I just said that, so I'm sorry. We're not thinking about sex-linked. We know it's sex-linked because it's only affecting males, but we want to know if it's dominant or recessive. If it's dominant, we would see that everybody who had the trait, everybody who was affected by the trait must have had a parent who also had the trait. But we don't see that here. We see that this, whatever trait this is, it's skipping generations. So the first generation, the grandparents, they didn't have the trait. But they had two kids who had the trait, two sons who had the trait. The next generation, we see that there are also parents here who did not have the trait, but they also had sons who ended up having the trait. So we know that this means that it's skipping generations. It must be recessive. Okay, nobody at the top moved. Anthony got it right. Good job. What is the genotype of individual C? What is their genotype? You want to know, is this sex-linked or not? You also want to know, is this dominant or is it recessive? Ask yourself those questions. Nobody gets it right. Okay, hold on. Let's look at this. So we need to know, first, is it sex-linked? We're looking at these shapes. We see that we've got squares and circles, so it's not just affecting one sex or the other. So this is not sex-linked. We also want to know if it's dominant or recessive. In this case, we don't see it skipping any generations. We see that it's present in every generation. So that's a clue that this is dominant. So it's not sex-linked, which means that we shouldn't be talking about X's and Y's. And we also know that it's recessive. So that means that, we also know that it's not skipping generations, so it's dominant. So for someone to not have the trait means that they don't have dominant alleles. They must be lowercase only. That's a tricky one. That is a tricky one. I definitely want to encourage you all to watch the video about pedigrees. As soon as it's uploaded, I'll send it out to you on Remind. 5 questions left. Which of the following diseases results from excess sun exposure? This should be an easy one. Skin cancer, good. That was an easy one. Stacy inherited sickle cell anemia from her parents who are both carriers. This disease is caused by a genetic mutation. Excellent. We knew that because we saw the word carriers, and Nick finally takes over the lead from Joseph. Okay, Joseph, you still have 3 questions to come back. These flowers have the same genotype, but each grew up in a pot of soil with a different pH level. Good job. So their environment is ultimately what altered their phenotype. And Chelsea, you're jumped into 3rd place. Big jump from Joseph right there. 2 questions left. White is recessive to brown. A heterozygous brown and white cat have babies. What % are brown? A heterozygous brown cat and a white cat have babies. Good job. Last question. Men can be carriers of autosomal traits. Autosomal, not sex, autosomal. True or false? Good job. That is true. Okay, let's see. Good job, Chelsea. Okay. So we struggled on this one. I definitely want you guys to make sure you are studying for Unit 7. We do have that exam Friday. Please make sure you are studying for Unit 7. It is our first exam of the second quarter. So it's going to be worth a lot of points for your grades. Please make sure that you are studying, watching the review videos, going back and watching class recordings, studying your notes, knocking out the assignments. Let me come back to our slides really quickly.
Mr. Webb,
Yes.
do you got the grade thing figured out yet? My mom wants to know.
Yeah. It should be updated on Canvas.
Updated.
What'd you say?
Mine on Power School wasn't updated.
Okay. Well, okay. Let me check that out. I'll give you an update again tomorrow.
Okay.
Now you do have one asynchronous assignment on Canvas. Disorders affected by genes and the environment is U7D6. So I want you guys to knock that out. Of course, we didn't do the warm-up or the exit. We didn't do the warm-up this morning. So please make sure you're dedicating time to that. I'm going to send you a remind message right now, but you do have those three things: your warm-up, your exit ticket, and this asynchronous assignment. We only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to stop recording. I'll stop sharing my screen, and I will let you guys go a bit early today.